Okay. Boom. Alive and alive. Very much alive. Yeah. On the TruMon Show, episode 295, if I'm not mistaken, with the great Honorable Arthur Christian. How are you?
Very good,
Great.
Johnny.
So today, again, we're together to keep talking about that box because, like I said to you, I think we're not completely done with this because we have looked at what the windows, the pain, the self, not what we said, pain and willpower and that. So now I want to look at what's preventing us from even sometime looking out the window because we have to imagine ourselves in a box that our life is a box life. And very often we're not even able to take a peek outside the window or imagine opening the window and starting to breathe more fresh air because we're suffocating with the lie inside the box. It's like the way I see it, it's like we're in a box, the lie is in the box, we live the lie in the box, and it's easier to stay in the box, living the lie, than starting to open the window and suddenly breathe some fresh air and something that would bring us to really to life, which is nature, a great link with nature, connection, whatever you want to say it. But I think that's really how it is. And sometimes that's why I want to understand a bit with you what's the mechanism that's going on in our head that preventing us from even looking out and see
Mm.
new opportunities and new stuff that we could experience in life, like a much more vibrant life, like talking with you, doing these talks like this, required of myself that I go outside this box. I cannot be in that box and do those stuff. It would be completely wrong. So that's I was willing to look that, and it's not because you see the big picture and you feel the big picture that you know everything about the big picture. So that's why I'm always been willing to see the big picture, but I have a lot to learn, and so that's why I hang out with a great person like you. I don't want to use the word people. Like I prefer a great person like you to help me navigate, those troubled waters that I'm still on. And no matter where I go in Babylon, I'm still in the troubled waters, and I
Mm.
haven't like a real high control over my mind yet and what I think and all this. So all this, the more I talk with person like you, the more I open the window and look out and go out So I would like you to extend a bit on that answer.
Yeah. Well, it's Johnny. It's very important that that no one believes anything this man is saying. So the information that are pictures, images we're sharing, it's important not to turn it into this duality where you become caught in the hoops of the cult, because you could easily, like the bouncing ball, we could easily follow what I'm saying and turn that into a cult. And so that's critical. And I feel what we're touching on in this video today is really a real direct connection to the first one, part one, we did 2 weeks ago. So maybe this will become part two, and the other one, we'll rename it to something else when we do put it up. It's some of us, because I don't know everyone who's doing it, but some of us of man, we've become detectives conscripted through the good heart inspiration to investigate the system and find the criminals and the crimes of the scenes of harm that we have found our lives being arisen, like we've grown into this stuff. So that's all I am. I don't consider myself to be great or anything. It's just passionate about the very fact, what is truth, what is reality. And that started in 2005. And so that investigation and the scrutiny to keep going where the truth, where the evidence, like a detective, is going until you get to the end and you've got a bigger picture of the whole crime. Now that includes using your senses, making sense, not going into the hoops of previous belief systems to try and find things that will fit into those boxes, because then we're actually not going to break outside of them. So that was one of the huge breakthroughs that I had. That, yeah.
Often, Arthur, what we do also, we bounce back with that ball. We might come out a bit of our nonsense, and then there's something like I think it's a mass mind manipulation or something.
Hypnosis.
To our bad habit and stuff that keep us, you know.
We really are all on stage. It's all staged because all the alphabets and all the scripts, the scriptures, everything coming out of the alphabets are predetermined. So we are under the spell on stage with an audience around us watching us become chooks and animals of different types on Animal Farm, and let the hypnotist create comedic scenes, but some of them become true tragedies and awful stuff. So that's how I'm seeing it more and more and more. That really is that simple. So getting outside the box is hopping off stage, breaking the spell, and sitting back and looking at what the F, where have I been doing all my life? What is going on with my family, my brothers and sisters, and you know, and that's what's happened to this man over these years, trying to make sense of this. This it truly is bamboozling, mesmerizing, and I've.
Circus. I had one friend coming before, and that's what we were talking about the COVID freak show. And said, yeah, there's probably going to be another circus coming soon to do with that. So we can't. It's like it's that's why there's that guy from the Cirque du Soleil, Cirque du Soleil, Guy La Liberté, the guy. Wonder why? Yeah, we are in the Cirque du Soleil. It's like a real circus down here.
Mm.
That's what
It's true. It really is a circus. And we are, some of us become animal trainers, and many of us are under the whip, performing whatever, you know, they want us to jump through, whatever hoops and fire and whatever else we're going to do. And it's so bizarre. But so anyway.
Someone not constantly fall into those oops after oops after oops. Like at one point, you tell yourself, okay, I have enough jumping like a bouncing ball. But like I said, it's easy to fall back into the bouncing ball rhythm. And so how do you completely, because no matter what, if you live in a city, if you live in the wood off of nature, you're really like water, shelter, food independent and all that stuff. Might be easier not to have that bouncing ball effect back in your life.
Mm.
Like me, I still feel that I bounce.
Well, because you've been practicing it. You know, you have been practicing this since the womb, 24/7, because that's all you knew. That's all we all knew. So how do we break that? Requires us to first realize this is what's happened, and then we have to create dreams that are not of these hoops that we're not bouncing through, and practice that 24/7. So gardens, growing food, co-creation, creating space for others to dream, because really it's all about stopping others being inside our heads and us stopping us being inside other people's heads. Because when we end that, we have paradise again, because that's all it is. It all simplifies, comes straight back to the fact that it's just man inside our heads shaping our lives for us without us being aware that this is happening. Some of us can sense we're not comfortable about being dragged off to school so young, and we don't like it, and we're questioning things for years. This is what happened with this man, and I've met others along the way of the Love for Life work who have shared very similar stories about their rebellion with school and their dislike. And I meet these people who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s or whatever, and it's so empowering for them when they come across these insights we share, because they can go back and see what happened and why they ended up sensing everything but not having the information to make clear pictures for them, as was with this man, about what this man handling, this horrific invasion of our brain, our lives, you know, because we are really just in programs of scripts.
Yep.
And we talk English like that. We work like that. We, you know, there's nothing else but this going on in the system every day, Johnny. So we have to stop that pattern, which means we have to create a way of life that doesn't have this programming being performed. So that's what kingdom is all about, the KINDO, not without the G, because we're not king. There's no kings or queens or any of this stuff. And there are no leaders or followers, right? None of this should go on. But it's just being responsible to stop being dependent on other men and women. Because when we're inside their heads, we need the water supply to our home with a meter on the end of it. We need the electricity, the gas. We need the monetary system, the commercial system, and all the consumer products and all the materialism. All of this is inside our heads and everyone else's heads. And so we're all using and abusing, rape, pillage, and plundering. And we become so desensitized that we don't even see the bigger picture of how many families are suffering for us to have success with material benefits, right? So that disparity, this what I was trying to say last week, it's like when we arrive in the womb, things are like this. If you can see that, right? It's like this, where then through the system programming, it goes like this over time because we practice it 24/7. We go to like this. So here in this way, we think this is normal, right? We think everything's normal. Now, when we go back to like this, to how things were, nobody's inside our heads. There are no hoops to jump through. There's no cult. We are truly free to have a true autonomy as a man on the land with food, water, shelter, and the dreams we create through our partners, and children, and communities and tribes, right? But in the system, this sort of happens, but it only happens because we have been got at through the head. And now everything is inside our heads telling us how to think and feel and act. And here we are, you and I and others waking up like this going, oh, hell, how do we get out of this? Well, unless we do this and change it back, get back, you know, this is just an analogy, right? But we're never going to break it. So if you grasp that, it's just each of us have got to work out who we are, what dreams you want to create, because no one, you and I cannot tell anyone what their dreams are because that's their soul. So we can't create a soul for our children. We can't create a soul for each other. We can't do that for anybody. And so that sacred space where everything went from that to this was desecrated, was decimated. Right? Remember, part one, we talking about the pirates coming in and conquering our vessel and taking control of our helm, and then encouraged us to create a fake persona that became the helmsman controlling the vessel on the alphabet ocean of the system of scripts and scriptures, you know, because that's all it is, storytelling. So we're in a dream world of storytelling within storytelling. So here we are right now with you. Well, how do we get out of this? Well, when you wake up this morning and you go to bed tonight, you can be sure that so much of this storytelling will continue going inside you because we're calling out French, we're calling out English, we're calling out all these scripts that are not our dreams, Shani. They are not our dreams. We never created any of them. So we are so practiced in this that unless we learn to sense another man's intention, we will not get past the language of this scripture to know what their intentions are, what their motives are, right? So when you meet someone like me, for example, you know, I'm all about creating gardens, food forests, but with space, so people who are creating can have their domain where they can have their dreams and raise their family and their children, but they're still part of a tribe, part of a larger community, but there's no intrusion into their private space, their private dreams, right? So that's what this man's doing to break down this intense invasion of our space, right? Get the pirates out, get the scriptures out of our head, get all this programming out.
And if I observe around, like I think something during the time we were talking, but if I observe around, we're the only one that speak a language. All the animals, they sense each other. They don't have words. Like the birds make sounds and stuff, but most animals sense each other just by looking at each other. Like two dogs get together,
Hmm.
like it's all their senses that like they don't need to speak.
It's they're sensing the intentions.
Sense the intention, exact. So
That's life. That's life itself.
that's why we've been completely desensitized from sensing others because of the language and all the ego stuff going in our brain.
And then going back to part 1 2 weeks ago, all this pixelations, all this, like you look at social media with Facebook, someone posts this, and then someone posts that, and then the next person posts that, and so every couple of minutes there's another post and another post taking to this subject, that one. So we don't even know how to concentrate and stay focused on the dream that we're holding, because we're pulled off all over the place. And that's what, again, we went from this to this, from peace to chaos, from do no harm to doing harm. And this is 24/7, because basically the homes we live in are full of appliances, full of building materials, full of all kinds of things that do harm, have caused immense harm to living things, to life. So we've learned to assimilate that and accept that as the norms of our life. So we are basically sitting on top of a pile of garbage, like in a tip, where garbage trucks are dumping all the junk. We're standing on top talking English and French to each other, glorifying our lives, talking about, fashion and sport and whatever. But really, it's just a pile of bloody shit that we are all part of, supporting. And we need all our brothers and sisters to support this pile of shit and keep it as a pile of shit. So we never ever get out of the stench of the system, of this sewer, this crap that we've got ourselves caught up in.
So is the way out the box collectively is really like the end of that ego, because the ego leads the show, the ego runs the show for most, like even
Yeah.
not me. So like to me, someone that has a big ego is someone you cannot even approach and share information or stuff with or talk to, like being receptive to new views and stuff. The ego knows. So someone that knows so much that he cannot be taught anything, and most
Mm.
are under a bit that spell of the ego, that
Mm.
they know things. So how do you collectively come out that box? Is it really the slaughtering of the ego suddenly that will break humanity free from all the chaos that we're experiencing?
Well, the ego is just the spell intended by a man that put us on stage, that turned us into the act, the animals in Animal Farm, right? So that's all the ego is. It's just scripture. It's scripts. And so when someone doesn't want to hear anything else, they're just locked into the script and they bonded to that. And that's all they know. So they are on stage under the spell of the script with the spell master, hypnotist, getting to do what they do through the whole of their lives as a Christian, as a Catholic, as a Greek, as a French Canadian, as a Rastafarian, as a punk rocker, or engineer, scientist. They are just scripts. And we are all on stage performing. So that's all the ego is, because E is ecclesiastical, is the hypnotist, the high priest of the occults. And the go is, okay, I'm now making you, remember we talked about, let's follow the bouncing ball. We're going to teach you to put you under the spell. Now you are a pig. I want you to get up and play in this on stage in an imaginary pigsty full of mud. And so suddenly you're on the floor wriggling around as a pig, and the next person in the next chair has now gotten up and it's a horse going, nay. And you understand? That's what the system is.
Yeah, but also
That's what
we don't know that we don't know that we don't know. So and we have a big inflated ego. It's a big job sometimes. Just break the surface of someone to try to talk or to.
Well, you've got to set examples that are not part of this, right? So you see, the thing with the system, with the ego, there's no everlasting fulfillment that we create through performing these hoops, jumping through these hoops in these cults. So there's always a point in life, which is repeated for many over and over again, where this sense of boredom or the sense of unfulfillment, that sense of things don't feel right, I'm not happy, I'm not content, I'm not satisfied, right? There are all these kind of things that linger. So hence the bombardment of the pixelations of the system coming at us to keep us hopping. So we never ever slow down enough to just look at these. Why are we feeling like this? Now, sometimes it's midlife crises, that man or woman in a marital breakup or something, or the death of a child in a family or something can trigger something bigger picture that they step back to look at. Well, what the hell is life all about? You know, and because they've gone through the trauma and all the suffering and the grief. So there are many ways that we can connect to this where a breakthrough may happen. But because they have free will, it's up to them, if they're dreaming for that, for that to happen. Right? Now, it can even go back into other lives where they've dreamt for this, if those have had other lives. And I want to explain this. This is part of the bigger picture I want to get into about this hologram. It's like life's like a hologram. That we are all at the effect of our dreams. And because man is a co-creator and we're all of man, we're all at the effect of each other, of the dreams, of those intentions behind those dreams. So it's just, each of us will find a way, if we truly intend it, to step back, like you've done when you said you had your accident, when you had what happened to your back or whatever it was that happened to your leg. I can't remember which one it was now, but what was it? Your knee. Yeah. Yeah. So for this man, I was sexually abused. The body was sexually abused, but the trauma of it and the horror of my family fighting, my mum and dad fighting, it left me with being a horse looking over the fence at everybody else. It's like when I went to school and when I went home, I got to see that other kids I became friends with or got to know, their life was very different to the life I had when I was going home. So I started questioning more and more about the misery that I was living in and the dissatisfaction I had as a very young child. So that gave me that sense of something isn't right. If I had gone to school when everyone was being battered and butchered, like this man had been suffering, maybe I would have thought, well, I wouldn't even have questioned anything. Maybe everything was just normal. I don't know. It's like you're a slave back in the times of Ben-Hur, and everyone's getting whipped and belted and smashed, and everyone knows everything, and you don't see who's belting you because you don't see anyone outside the cage of all the belting. Maybe you wouldn't question, and you'd be a slave all your life, and you think this is normal, right? Well, in the system, we are that, but we can't see our slave masters doing the belting and the whipping and all that because it's all covert, right? So it's a lot more challenging to look at the brilliance of these occultists, these Freemasons, how they have designed these alphabet languages and how we've ended up performing these cult of hoops, which we get stuck in them. We get so stuck in them. And we think this is it. That's what Janak is what Arthur is who we are, right? So these are just we're just generalizing about something that a lot of us are waking up to now. But even that, with the good heart sentiment, is not going to be enough to change what's become of us. It's going to require our free will, using the exertion of our willpower to break away from the hoop programming. Hence, what Fiona and this man are doing is kingdom with other brothers who want to live like that, where we are not subjected to this stuff anymore, because we're not answerable to anybody. We're just answerable to the conscience that's built into us, that I don't seek to use and abuse another man because I want what the other man has for the rest of my life, so I can have the benefits of those proceeds, which is what we do in the system. Because you comprehend that the life force energy of our free will in action is the system that builds the roads, it builds the shopping centers, it makes the farmers produce the produce with the chemicals. Look, there's everything of the system is like this. So we are tapping into the rape, pillage, plunder, use, abuse of everyone to get our bit that we want from it. So kingdom is breaking away from all of that. We don't want to support this anymore. So a man on the land, fully responsible for a piece of land, or whether it is a massive, multi-thousands of miles of food forests, all interconnected, all created, and we become nomads again, traveling, in the system words of seasonal things. It doesn't matter. The fact is, we're no longer dependent on the system. You follow? Because food, water, shelter is where our ancestors were before the invasion of these UFOs, or these strange occultists in their ships, with all these slaves, rowing boats and, big admiralty ships. You get that. So we still have that memory, that connection to the true waves is still in all of us.
I have a question for you. All animals, including us, you can include us in the animals, sometimes it's pretty much that, make sounds. Like the bird makes sounds, even the snakes, they all make some kind of sound. So if we wouldn't have learned all those alphabet, Latin language, and all that, is there some, because normally, naturally, we would have made sounds. If I'm capable to speak and make sound, like collectively somewhere, someone would have say thought of a language or a way to communicate. Or so is there a language that we don't, because English is the language of choice for the falling under the spell, their Babylonian spell. But is there a language out there or in the past that we should have stick on that's been discarded because there wasn't enough sorcery around it? I can say.
Well, every dream has a creator that sets the dream into motion. So the original dream of life, that is nature, has a creator, and the intention of that dream of life is there in everything that was created. Now, how and life and all that is another subject, but we're saying there never was a beginning to life, because life comes out of life, comes out of life, comes out of life. The intelligence behind life came out of the intelligence behind life, came out of the intelligence behind life. And there's never been a beginning, or there ever will be an end to that intelligence. So the dream set into motion that formed nature carries the true language, carries the true tongue of the original creator, or what we call the original man. You see, so in that way, we have just gone from the original dream that was designed for all of us without invalidation to uniqueness, originality, and we have been completely altered from white to black, from truth to lies, where we've gone from non-duality to duality, right? So in that, we've become confused about the original dream and the original purpose. So it's our senses, because the senses can't be corrupted. You can't corrupt the senses, right? Because the senses are not, we don't own them. You can't own senses. You can't, because the senses is the dream, is the fabric of the dream of life itself. The communication between the bee and the flower, between the bird, the bee and the flower, the droplets of water, the moisture between the bird, the bee and the flower, and the leaf on the tree and the branches and the insects crawling up the bark of the tree and the root systems and the humus and the information highway of all of nature communicating with each other through the humus and all the fungi in the soil and all that. You see, so, and then from that you've got eagles, and you've got these big amazing bears and lions and tigers, and look, it's there is a purpose, a true living purpose, and it's evidentiary because, for example, they've done experiments on flies, and through generations they produced a blind fly or many blind flies. And when they stopped the experiments, through a few more generations, the flies returned to being flies they could see the way they could see. We've done it with mice, where we've taken from social creatures who live together and work together into individuals that became hostile and vicious. And then when we stopped doing these kind of experiments, when we went from this to this, they reverted back to this again. They became through few generations, they got back. So we can never sever the true connection of life, of the dream of life. The only thing that's happening is we're still in the duality, bouncing through the cult of hoops, because everything was defined to us about everything we're experiencing through our senses. Right? So that's why when we look at something, oh, that's yellow, it's not yellow. It's just a story that we are representing and placing that on what we're looking at, but it ain't yellow and it ain't a daffodil. Right? That's Johnny playing Superman, but that isn't Superman. That's just Johnny playing Superman. Right? But we get so used to every day Johnny running around with the Superman costume. And Johnny's playing. But in the system, we've gone past the playing. We're all on stage, and this is all real. And we think that, Janik is a Rastafarian, and, Arthur is this, and, race, culture, creed, title, standings, ethnicity, and on it goes. These are all scripts that define the perception of reality. And that is what distracts us from sensing, because our head is busy focusing on the images to recall, like you and I talking English right now. We have to keep recalling the sounds of all the spelling we did as kids to talk to each other. But if we wake up, even though we're still talking English, if you're sensing this man's intention and this man's sensing your intention, we are really talking, because the language becomes nothing. So it's just a bigger medium. Okay, we are talking English, or we're talking French or Greek, whatever. But if we sense each other's intentions, we are truly communicating powerfully. Now, if there was no language, alphabet languages, and we were brought up in nature, that communication is still what's going on. So all we're doing is reverting. We went from that to this, now we're bringing it back again. So
because
there is a...
Go ahead.
There is an intention, a purpose behind everything of life. So the only way I can explain it, and I keep using these same analogies and metaphors, is that imagine the creator, everyone calls it God, and there's God holding the dream of life as a bubble in its hand. There is no life. It's just the creator's life. And the bubble contains all the information the creator is holding about life. Now, at that point, and this is a linear analogy, right? There's no real point. There's no beginning any of this. I'm just trying to explain a way to look at this fragmented state that we're in and how we got to get out of it. Is that at that point, the bubble is just an idea, a thought. But there is no cow alive in there. There's no wind, there's no sunlight, nothing. But the creator loved the dream so much that it moved its life into the bubble to give life to everything that the creator was holding. So the intention of the creator in everything that was dreamt, no different to an architect or an engineer who's designed something and then puts it through all the blueprints and for all the workers to come together to create this bridge, house, table, football team, rock and roll band, Rastafarian music, YouTube channel. The same thing applies. So in that dream, the Creator moved its life into the bubble to set into motion everything held in focus by the Creator, whose intent was to give life to the dream it loves so much. So there is the Creator in this bubble as man standing on the land. Basically, God came as man. The Creator came as man, holding the dream of life the Creator had created. And everything that was set into motion has a purpose, an intention, dreamt by the Creator. And that's nature. Now, the way this man looks at it, there was no bubble. There was no beginning to the bubble. There's no end to the bubble. It just is. It's always existed. It never started. And we appear out of this bubble. Now, you could look at this bubble like a hologram, like a 3D hologram. Again, it's a lineal construct. It's because it's not, the truth is it's non-lineal, it's undefined. And every intention the Creator dreamt is in the water of the breath of the Creator, who breathed its life into the dream of life to give life to everything. So all the water, all the moisture, all the mist, everything is in the rock. It's in the bee. And the water is the information of the dream the Creator had held and set into motion. And so this is done through senses, right? It's all sensory. Now, if you look at the original dream, there's no hospitals there. There's no government. There's no alphabets. There's no shopping centers and supermarket. There's no instructor to God. God hasn't gone to an instructor in God's dream to say, please tell me what I am and who I am, right? There's no book for God to go and read the holy book and tell God what God has just done and created and what you must do to remember. None of this is happening because it's already happening in the very dream that God had created, that the original man had created, and is living the dream, you see? So that is still here with us now, and with our children, and our 50th generation down the line, and multi-million generations down the line, and with multi-generations back the other way through our ancestors. It's still here now. That presence is still present, that intent. And God never created an alphabet to talk to God's creation, because the intention was done through the senses, because it was all undefined. So every leaf is unique and original. Every grain of sand, every drop of water, everything of creation, every instance is unique and original, never to be repeated. And it's undefined. And that was the part of the original purpose. And all of it was sacred. And we're not to desecrate this. So we're gifted life. So in the hologram, in this big hologram, that really is not a bubble, it's undefined. So you can't get outside this hologram. God created a child. Now, I don't know how God created man and created woman, because really we're all androgynous. But it doesn't, at this point, I don't know how all that happened, but I know it happened. There's something happened. And I know there is no duality, because that's all bullshit, because if a child's brought up if many children are brought up in nature, they would not know what male or female was, because no one's there to tell them what they were or how they were. And there's nowhere to go. All they are is listening to the song of the bee and the birds and the communication. All that sensorama is just inspiring the children. And they are creating their unique life out of the life of the Creator's dream of life. But they're not under the God. They're not under someone else. It's true freedom, man, true peace, true paradise. So God creates a child. And this child had no expert to tell the child what the child was. So there was no hospital, no holy books. There were no one telling. Even God wasn't telling the child what the child is, because it was undefined. You see, so the whole of the system and everything that's gotten in our head doesn't exist there for the child that God created in paradise. So there's God standing on the land amongst this amazing paradise with a child who created a child, who created a child. And then we got tribes all living in this amazing paradise. No alphabets, no hospitals, no military, no war, no governments, no rules, regulations, rituals, procedures, conditions, contracts. No one inside their heads about anything. No one ever did that. That never happened. You got it. So somewhere along the way of life, the life of a man decided to get into the head of another man and tried to define. So in the hologram, now remember this, every time we breathe out, we create water. And our dreams are encoded, our intentions are encoded in our breath. And it lives in the hologram forever. So it's because it's undefined, it's not like a bucket and you can only hold so much. It's undefined, so it's just expanding. So the more man creates, the more life is expanding. Because more breath, more intention, more dreaming is added to the dream of life, more experience through senses. Everything's expanding. So the more man created man, the more the dream of life expanded, right? But it's not linear, so it's not defined into cosmic universes with system science and galaxies and levels and planes and dimension. None of this is happening. These are just constructs that we, call out the scripts. So, but here's the thing. When a child was created by a family and the child was brought up by nature, the child in exploring nature, brought up by animals, the child knew the dreams of all their ancestors, including their parents' intentions, because it was in everything. So the child had not forgotten what the child was and the true purpose of the dream of life, of that family, of that tribe, and of every man. It was there as a living dream. So the child growing up in nature was communicating with all their ancestors and never has stopped. So even you and I now are still communicating with our ancestors when we sense things, when we're not listening to the stuff in our heads, all this, right? So every breath set into motion carries information about the life that lived that life. You follow? So when we went from this to this, there was no this or this, right? I just understand this, there's no duality. But when someone dreamt to get inside another man's head, some new type of information was encoded into the dream of life. And the person who created had the intention, I want you to be in my image. So I want to control another man's dream. See, which has never happened before because God never created a dream for everyone to be like God in that way. It was given true freedom to be whatever in the dream of life. And because aeons, it's not even time, but for how many generations of eternity, life was being created by man, there was no one getting inside another man's head to define them about anything. But somehow it happened. And I don't know the true history anymore about when it happened, and it doesn't matter. The fact is it happened. And that's all that matters. So when you can see this domain, this hologram, and suddenly there's this tiny bit of black circulating amongst pure white everywhere. The black being the intention to control another man and how they're thinking and infect another man who then sets that black into motion. So suddenly the black starts to expand and that lie starts to grow. Now, all that's still in the hologram. So everyone who got sucked into the lie of the grand architect of the occults who started this lie to define us, that formed the boxes, the hoops of all the cults, of the occults that we are caught up in, right? Because all mysticism, all that are hoops that we're jumping through. Because you don't get born into the mysteries of Babylon. You don't get born into the mysteries of the occults. You're born into another man who's been getting in your head. But more than that, we become susceptible to the dreams of all these people. So even if we're brought up in a tribe, because it's in the water of our breath, we can pick up the black, even though there's no one living as that black amongst us. And we can become besotted, become fascinated with that information and start to look at it and not realize we're becoming part of the black. You follow that? So that's what crop circles is all about.
Hold on.
That's what.
I'm going to ask you that, but just before you jump to that, is that why it's important that we, or the system, remain intelligent and we're being, because there's that word intelligent that often rings weird in my head, make a weird sound, and you know, people, if you go back, the being of this earth, if you go back 600 years, they were also intelligent. But today, the word intelligent have took a whole different meaning or for what it's intended. Don't you
Yeah,
think?
because we went from this to this. That's all that's happened. The intelligence of life was always there, as it is still here now. Because the intelligence is just the intentions of the original man, the original creator that created the dream of life. And everything of nature lives as that intelligence. So we call it the DNA, RNA, whatever you want to call it. The programming, the natural programming of the creator that created the bird, that created everything, carries the intelligence of the creator, because the bird has a purpose. And in the ecosystem of nature, everything does what it does to keep the whole of the dream of life in present sense, in focus. So that as God could create a child, and the presence of life is still there for the child to experience. You see, so if the information of nature wasn't working that way, the whole of nature, the dream of life, would collapse, and there would be no life for the child to have a life. So the whole purpose of the dream of life is to hold it in present sense across eternity, so that man can create man, and every man can access the intelligence of man, of God, of the original man, and experience it. You follow that? Because if we don't, if the ecosystem wasn't doing, like if the bird wasn't eating the insect and the insect wasn't eating another insect, and all these things were happening, and remember what they're doing, they're maintaining optimum purity of life. So it's not survival of the fittest as such, it's maintaining the purity. So the alligator, the crocodile, the shark, they all have a purpose. You know, the leopards chasing their prey and getting the weakest. It's not a sadness, it's maintaining purity, so that everything is at optimum of the whole of dream of life, you know, the wholeness, the synergy, where the total is greater than individual parts. So life is sustained in present sense, like a picture on the wall that doesn't fade away. It's at present, so that we can create children and come into and out of lives in the physical present sense of this dream,
Because
right?
the majority of beings on this earth, about being intelligent, have a definition that knowing the Babylon stuff, the mathematics and all that, and that is being intelligent, but they will not mention any synchronicity, connection, or say, think with the nature or nothing like that, even with themselves, their own being. So
Exactly. We've gone in and started to corrupt those who got caught up in the black of this lie. And the lie is just a definition. And behind the definition is a man with the intention to control, to dominate another man. Basically, the intention is, I want you in my image. I want you to live my dream. I want you to be under my dream. So everything of the lie that became black in this analogy is this. So regardless how far we went from here through the generations, we fell to this, and now at the point of extinction, because we're no longer remembering what life is anymore, what the dream of life, because the information is not being held in focus. The lie is being held in focus because we've got system constructs and concepts in our heads spinning, you know, and that's why we have vast libraries of pixelations of lies defining everything to us, and we're talking all the alphabet languages, and inside the domain of this bubble, of this hologram, we're setting into motion the lie, which is corrupting and destroying reality. So you can raise a child through school and university, who comes out as a professor in astronomy or some kind of biology or whatever, and whatever they are looking through the telescope and microscope, not a single thought in their head is not coming from reality that they are observing. It's come from the collective scriptures of storytelling that went right back through all the programming they put under. And that goes for everyone who's raised in the system. So this black is now transforming mountains into cities, into suburbs, into concrete, plastic, and steel, all these dead things that have no life. They're dead. That make us slaves to maintain something that can't maintain its own life. So where a cow and a horse and a bee and everything of nature looks after everything. We don't have to be involved in maintaining its existence, its purpose, because they do it already, right? So the whole ecosystem of nature itself is that, to maintain optimum life in present sense. So we can create a child and bring them into the present to experience the dream that we're dreaming, just as God created it, to bring a child into God created to experience God's dream and share that. But because it's all undefined, there was no indoctrination. The child was not being indoctrinated by anything or anyone, including God,
So
because it had nature.
we call ourselves intelligent, but there's a part missing in that intelligence, which is the sync with nature and the sync with everything that surrounds us, like the animals, and that we're butchering animals. No, so we're not very, and we always, everyone say that humanity has been dumbed down. So there's something, is it me missing something about the word?
You haven't been provided with full disclosure about the dreams that were set into the motion to the water of breath, because the whole dream of life is water, and the lie is in the water. And we've not given full disclosure about these definitions and what they will do to us, how life will change for us if we set into motion these definitions, where we become inside the box of the lie and become practiced jumping the hoops of the cult, of that occult. You see, so it doesn't matter from which window you're looking at into this, it's the same shit. So all it is, in this domain, in this hologram, undefined bubble, there's no outside of the bubble, we appeared in the water. We came from the water, we came as the water, we live in the water, and we never ever leave it, ever. And you can't get outside of it. So when the rocket ships and all these lies try to get out, it's water. They can't get outside of it because it's just a man there. So when man talks about galaxy, it's a man projecting man's dream. And wherever man's dreams go, so goes the water. So the consciousness is expanding because it's man there as the dream, telling us how we should think and feel about life. So university and school education is defining our perception of reality. But it's all coming out of water. Follow that. So it's like when you get a cult together who direct their life energy into the images of the lie, you can form crop circles.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, what about?
And you can set those crop circles into motion through generations because of that intention. But you can't go and visit the crop circle because there's no life form there. You can't go and visit the children of the crop circle. You can't go and see the descendants and where they were buried of the crop circles. You can't go and visit the ancestors of the crop circle. You can't go and visit the descendants of the crop circles. There's nothing of nature that needs a crop circle to exist for them to exist. Basically, there's nothing of nature that needs to eat the crop circle for them to exist. Because the crop circle is really just wheat or any other grains that made these shapes. And how those shapes were formed were by the intentions of man, because we're all God. God came as man, and everything God created as children are God. And we are just creators, and we're fully responsible for everything we think, feel, and do. There's nothing else. We're the only ones here. There's no one else here. It's just us.
Are they there or not?
Sorry?
Are they there, the crop circle? Like I know, I saw.
No. The crop circle is a man's intention that you're looking at. Just a man's dream.
Well, there's nothing in the field. Like there wouldn't be.
No, it's no, I can walk through the field and make a pathway through and you can see my path, but I created that path. The shape of the crop circle in the wheat belt is just another man who created it. Now, that doesn't matter if it comes out of the occult of many of man together who all created it. Whether they're even not conscious that they are creating it. It doesn't matter if it's created by laser, by satellites, whether it's created by co-creation, but you see, we are the creator. And we call out whatever we're dreaming and we'll form shapes in the hologram of life, create imprints. So Mystery Babylon through the ancient civilization is full of this shit. It's just men and women dreaming dreams and making shapes, imprints into the dream of life that are not part of the original dream of life. And some people say, oh, but there are other beings, other dimensions, other levels. There's more to us. But they can't bring forward any of this into present sense so we can directly experience it without them telling us the story, telling us the script about it. See, so if you were not exposed to crop circles, meaning the storytelling of it, all the attached scripture, and you were brought up by nature, you wouldn't even recognize it. You wouldn't even see it because you're too busy in the senses of the wheat and the grains and the rye and the birds and all those things. And remember, most of these fields are man-made fields of modern agriculture. You don't see these fields naturally in the food forests. So where you see all these fields is just destroyed valleys and mountains that have been turned into pasteurized, homogenized pieces of land where farmers are running their tractors and machinery and putting chemicals and poisons in God knows what to create these crops of corn or crops or whatever for these images to appear by being flattened. But we are the only one to the experience. The only thing we don't have is full disclosure as to the background to what we are experiencing, because it hasn't been explained to us how we create all these things. And while we are enchanted by crop circles, we will accept the fact that there's a higher power than us out there than us. We can by default accept something else more than what is here in present sense. And if we give up present sense, we give up full responsibility for who we are and what we are, which means we will entertain, like a child entertains Superman in Metropolis, who then gets paralyzed, like I showed you in part one, because Krypton happened to be in the script. You can have people paralyzed by the mysticisms of the occults through crop circles and be caught up and mesmerized by the wonderments of seeing these shapes. But you don't see the life form. There's no life form that is a crop circle. You see, there's no creature that goes to crop circle to drink its milk because there's no milk there. There's no substance. See, all you got is corn or rye. And if we don't interfere, nature will recreate paradise there over generations, like the blind fly that could then, through generations, came back to seeing again. The same thing happens. It's just present sense is all that exists. And we are always present to what we're sensing. But we've not been given full disclosure about the images of these lies and who created them. And so in the hologram, moving through this illusory three-dimensional world of fantasy, we come across a crop circle. But we're not able to step back to a bigger picture to see that it was just a man who dreamt that, and others got caught into the occult of that intention. And the collective power is like a placebo effect, like a Stockholm syndrome, like you said earlier. Most people don't want to wake up. They don't want to know. They are so set. And that's what happens to people who get trapped in the mysticisms of the occult. Because the cult is just more than one man setting the dream of that information into motion. So it's a collective dream. For example, God never created Jesus, never created the Word. A man created the Bible. And a man created the intention that there was a beginning to the Word, and the Word was God and is God. A child brought up by nature will never experience that. It's come from the scripts spinning in our heads that we're recalling. Now, if you allow that cult to expand, it will form a religion, institution of many men and women inside the bubble of that dream that's floating inside the large hologram of the dream of life with all the pure intentions of the dream of life that was still sacred, untouched, unharmed so far. So you just got, it's like that joke where a man died and he went to heaven and he meets Peter at the gate. And Peter says to, well, welcome. And I can't remember how it worked, but basically, let me take you through heaven so you can find out where your place is in heaven. And so they're walking through heaven, and the man says to Peter, what's that group of people over there? He says, oh, that's the Jehovah's Witnesses. They just like to stick together. See, that's a bubble floating in the hologram. And then they keep walking through heaven. Oh, who's that over there? Oh, they're Seventh-day Adventists. They all like to stick together too, right? And then they keep walking. Who's that over there? Oh, that's just the Mormons. They all like to stick together, right? And they keep walking through, and you're just seeing one bubble, another bubble of these cults or people in it. And so he gets explained, oh, that's Greek Orthodox, and that's Russian Orthodox, and that whatever, right? Eventually, they arrive against this big wall, massive wall. And the man says to, what's behind the wall? He says, oh, they're just Catholics. They think they're the only ones here. You follow that? Yeah. They think they're the only ones here. You see, so we create the shapes within the occults through our intention. So we can easily create freedom movements, truth movements. We can create all kinds of movements that are just cults. And the pictures, the power of these imprints are no different to the Beatles and the revolution of the Beatles and the British contemporary rock music that spread over the world. It's the same thing. It's just bubbles within bubbles of intention, of water, of man's dream inside, circular, floating in the dream of life, in the hologram of the dream of man's life. Because that's all that exists. We're the only ones here. See, there is no experience without a man being a party to the experience. There's not a single thought that you can ever have that is not a man experiencing that thought. And thoughts are dreams. So everything is to man's experience. So if the intention is to dumb us down and make us stupid for generations, we'll produce a generation in the occults of English or any other alphabet who can talk about what we talk about, but can't step back to a bigger picture to see the information, how it all really works. We're just trapped in the tiny details of where the devil operates as these occultists and get lost in that. That's, again, that pixelation's coming at us all the time. So crop circles is just one of those bubbles of pixelations on your monitor that you look through the dream of life. There's 1,001 of them, mate. Like every instant of your life, there's 1,001 of these pixelations flickering on and off, coming at you like the monitor that we're looking for right now to talk to each other across this fictitious internet. So crop circles is this. The crop circle is no different to the kid wearing a Superman costume. You can't go and visit Superman, ever. You can't go and visit Metropolis. You can't go and visit Kryptonite. You can't go and visit other universes and galaxies because all that was introduced to us, that became a bubble that we fed it with our life energy that formed the occult of Superman. And all you got is children. Well, like Star Trek. Now we have Star Trek fans that run seminars and they come every year. They have these Star Trek groups, right? It's the same thing. They're just all inside the cult. So the crop circle's the same. And all the mysticism of the occult are all the same, no matter what comes at you, no matter what you're looking at. So another one is where men and women who all have access to the good heart because the creator that created its good heart is in everything. And that good heart is do no harm, is empathy, compassion, is co-creation, is support, nurturing, is truth, is honesty, is it's full disclosure. All these are all the sentiments of the good heart, right? We are built out of this. So when we appeared in this natural hologram of life, undefined, we already had the whole mechanics of that built into every cell in our body. And it's with us forever, as it still is with all our ancestors and all our descendants. So the confusion has just come about because we've entered into dreams where we're learning to disregard the good heart, where we go against our conscience, where we're prepared to do harm because we're prepared to dominate another man to get what we want from another man, and then form cults out of this that became civilizations, military armies and forces like waves that form crop circles shapes and fucking, excuse my language, in rye paddocks and wheat paddocks. No different to walking into a suburb, Shanik, where all the kids out in the street all wearing Superman costumes.
I have more question for you about the crop circles and other phenomena that supposedly takes place on Earth, but maybe we'll come back with that next chat we have together, if you don't mind.
Yeah, but you just, all I'm trying to get at is it's just man to the experience. So we've got to step back to a much bigger picture to look at what we are experiencing and get all the information together that explains to us the truth about what it is we are actually experiencing. Because we're raised in the system, we're not provided with full disclosure. And because we've been exposed to ancient mysticism and the occult, which became behind ancient Tibet, ancient India, which has all come out of Egypt, Egypt being the root of the occult, which all came out of ancient Greece. Because ancient Greece is the world of Freemasonry, of occults, where this all mushroomed out, and it's spread out across Earth. And that's why the residues of this first attempt at this one world system, this one world language, one world everything, of one man who wanted to control all of man, right, still lingers. So that's why they call it the second coming of Jesus, because the attempt to deceive us all into this one world dream of under one man is an ancient problem. And so unless we can step back to an even bigger picture to look at this, we're going to get sucked into the mysticism where someone says, oh, but there is another dimension. There is another world out there of other beings. And that's because we dreamt it. Our ancestors dreamt it and gave life energy. And that's a Superman costume lingering in the hologram that someone will say, oh, that's another being, another higher power. It's just a Superman costume, mate, that we're holding in focus. You know, like the thing in Batman, and the light goes up in the sky, and there's the symbol of Batman. Dun, 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 dun. You know, that whole thing, Batman. That's a crop circle. That's a cult. With a man saying, oh yeah, there is another world. There are other beings out there. We dreamt that too. You see, every intention, Janik, every intention, every dream of this lie is still circulating in this domain, in this hologram. And if we're not given full disclosure, we can be seduced through fascination and not realize that we're falling into the scripture.
Thanks, Arthur. I have to go now, but that's it. We'll be together again next Sunday, same time. And we'll keep going about, like I said, the crop circles. I have a few other questions for you relating to that and the box.
Good, man. Just remember, you are a man with the question. You are the man. But you won't find anything that isn't a man with the question.
Or interrogation.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. It's still a man.
Thanks, Arthur, and thanks everyone watching. This is going to be on.
We're the only ones here, Shanik. We are the only ones here.
Yeah, I want to talk to you also next time about the you of YouTube, the you, because it's not. I don't think it's Y-O-U. I think it's just you, too. So there's something with that you.
Well, what's a you? You're a you in that, and you're in the tube. What's a tube? A box. It's just you in the box.
Anyway.
It's all, look, the whole of the system is black magic. Everything. Television, Hollywood, everything. It's black magic. It's what I'm explaining to you. We are creating everything to the experience. So we can sit there and question, but it's just us questioning. But there's nothing outside of man questioning. It's just us. And you haven't been given full disclosure. That's why you're still questioning. So when you realize it's just us and we're creating it, we can say, I'm not going to support this lie anymore. Stop it. So crop circles will disappear. Because if no one's dreaming crop circles, it won't appear anymore. If we stop worshiping Superman, there's no one running around wearing the Superman costume.
It's like the
Stop.
in the box with the Superman, with the movies, with all the Babylonian stuff.
It's all distractions. Distractions, remember, it's just a distraction from food, water, shelter that makes us want a man on the land with our true dreams of paradise, because they've gotten inside our heads and filled us up with so much shit and don't leave us alone. It's relentless pounding from birth to death.
The word freedom also I want to talk to you about. It's
Yeah, free dumb as in free dumb.
I have a few other interactions.
But sense the intentions, bro. Remember that? We sense the intentions past all this. So when we talk about freedom, we know what we're sensing, right? We're not performing the free dumb cult ritual. Because that's what everyone in the Freedom Truth Movement is doing. Everyone's trying to create freedom out of constructs and concepts, right? And that's free dumb, because there's no freedom there. Because they don't have dreams, right? They don't have dreams they've created. So to finish this quickly, let's end this. The crop circles that you're questioning are not your dreams. While you are enchanted in these dreams that are not of your creation, you keep feeding it. And if you keep feeding it, wherever it came out of, that world, you'll call all of it into your life. So if you can't see the bigger picture where crop circles came out of, you won't see everything else that comes with crop circles all around you now that enslaves you inside the box as a slave.
Do I need to wash my brain like triple wash, triple rinse, triple scrub?
Yeah, just like Fiona said last week in the one we did last week, you've got to look at every single thought in your head. You've got to really scrutinize everything. I'll let you go. Catch up next week, bro.
All right. See ya.